In another serious escalation here in the Middle East tonight, Iran has launched a barrage of missiles towards Israel on the same day that Israel launched a ground invasion into southern Lebanon against Hezbollah. Well, across Israel just a few hours ago, the sound of sirens were heard. People ran for cover in bomb shelters and the sight of bright flashes and explosions were seen in the sky. Now, Israel has said that the attack will have consequences. Iran has said that if Israel retaliates, its response would be, in its words, crushing and ruinous. Well, the Israel Defense Forces said around 180 missiles were launched towards Israel this evening. Warning sirens sounded right across the country at around 5:30 UK time, and explosions were heard soon after. Now, those missiles were fired across huge swathes of Israel, including towards Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Well, our correspondent John Donnison is there now. And John, you, along with millions of others, had to seek shelter when those sirens sounded.
That's right. 4.5 hours ago, us, like millions of Israelis across the country, received a text message warning us to get to the shelters immediately. The sirens rang out. We ran for the safe room here in the BBC bureau. This is an unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel on this scale, and the consequences could be huge. Israel was warned it was coming, but this was Iran's revenge. Almost 200 ballistic missiles raining in across the country.
Oh God. Okay guys, we gotta get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here.
As people ran for shelter, with the Iranian missiles travelling 2,000 kilometres in only around 12 minutes, Israel's defence system was at full stretch.
We are on high readiness for defence and offence. We will protect the citizens of Israel. This attack will have consequences. We have plans to act at a place and a time of our choosing.
This restaurant in Tel Aviv took a direct hit. And this was a school in central Israel. The US said it helped in shooting down some of the missiles. Its intelligence agencies had alerted Israel to an imminent attack. But America says Iran gave no advance warning.
The United States military coordinated closely with the Israeli Defense Forces to help defend Israel against this attack. U.S. naval destroyers joined Israeli air defense units in firing interceptors to shoot down inbound missiles.
In Gaza tonight, as Iran pounded Israel, there were celebrations, as there were in the Iranian capital too. Iran had vowed vengeance after Israel assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Iranian-backed Lebanese militia Hezbollah, on Friday. And Israel killed the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, on Iranian soil back in July. Meanwhile, this evening in Jaffa, near Tel Aviv, just before the missile attack, Israelis were shot dead in what police say was a terrorist attack. For months now, the world's diplomats have tried to stop the year-long war in Gaza from engulfing the region. They've failed, and after tonight's unprecedented Iranian attacks, Israel is expected to hit back hard. John Donnison, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, in just a moment, we'll speak to our North America editor, Sarah Smith, because the US has confirmed tonight that its military did assist in shooting down some of those Iranian missiles as they headed towards Israel. But let's return first to John Donnison in Jerusalem. And John, what is the feeling there tonight?
Well, look, we knew that Iran was going to seek vengeance, as it put it, for the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon on Friday, and also for Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, back in the end of July. But, you know, Israel has not had an attack like this from Iran in its history. And the mood of defiance there you heard from Benjamin Netanyahu suggests that Israel is going to respond with force It's another incredibly dangerous moment in a conflict now which has lasted almost exactly a year and is spreading across the Middle East.
John, thank you in Jerusalem. To New York then, and Sarah Smith. Sarah, what has the US reaction been to this attack tonight?
Well, we heard from President Biden a few minutes ago, and he said that the attack had been ineffective and defeated, and that he had instructed the US military to assist in Israel's defence. And as we heard, US naval destroyers fired about a dozen interceptors at those Iranian missiles. President Biden and Vice President Harris watched all this happen from the Situation Room. And Mr. Biden also said, make no mistake, he is fully supportive of Israel's security. He said he hasn't spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu yet, but that he intends to, and they will discuss the consequences for Iran. And other officials here say it's just too early to start discussing what those consequences might be. But you can be sure that America is no longer going to be urging Israel to exercise any restraint in its response. They see this as an entirely different situation, what they're calling a brazen and unacceptable escalation of hostilities in the region from Iran in support of terror groups that it nurtures and supports in the region. So the emphasis here today, quite different actually from how it was yesterday, is very much on what America's calling its ironclad support for Israel's right to defend itself, although they won't say whether or not the US might actually be involved in any of that response and the consequences when that indeed comes.
Sarah, thank you. Well, fears are growing about the escalating crisis here in the Middle East. In the early hours of this morning, Israel's military said that its troops had crossed the border into southern Lebanon, and they told people living in more than 25 villages there to evacuate immediately. Well, today it was also revealed that Israeli special forces had operated inside Lebanon dozens of times over the last few months, destroying tunnels and dismantling weapons. Well, we're going to take you to both sides of the border tonight. In just a moment, we'll get the latest from our senior international correspondent, Orla Guerin, who is in the southern Lebanon city of Tyre. But first, our Middle East correspondent, Lucy Williamson, is on the border in northern Israel. Lucy.
Well, Anna, tonight, people here in northern Israel were still absorbing the news that Israel had launched that ground incursion into Lebanon across the border here. And today, we were told that Israeli special forces had spent more than 200 nights on the Lebanese side of the border, preparing the ground, finding and destroying Hezbollah targets there. The Iranian missile attack tonight, though, is a real reminder of how widespread, how unpredictable the risks of Israel's wars can be.